Hello everyone, so I'm back here to show you my Luminari box. So the other day I showed you guys how to assemble it, and then I showed you guys how to scrape the sides to try and hide the seams. So at the end of the video I continued working on it, just using a ruler, holding it flush against the side and scraping where all my outside seams were. If I had a gap and I couldn't get rid of the seam, I rolled a little bit of a worm of clay and I tacked it in place and blended it in. I gave it 5 or 10 minutes to dry and just kind of adhere, and then I went back with the ruler and I scraped it again, filling in that little gap, kind of like filling in a nail hole with spackle on a wall, just so it would be nice and smooth and flush. After I did that, I took my trusty sponge and I went and I just sponged all over, inside and out, rounding the edges, smoothing the surface, trying to make it as perfect and as clean as I could. So at this point, I have done that. So I'm just going to hold this up for a second, a little closer to the camera, and hopefully you can see the surface is very smooth, very clean. I've sponged it inside, I've sponged it on the outside, I've smoothed those coils down that were in the seams on the inside, and I've also sponged the bottom surface as well. So just doing everything to try and make it as perfect as I can. Now as I hold it here in the light, I can see a couple little finger marks inside, so I'll go back and I'll sponge that a little bit more. But for the most part, I've got this all set, and now what I'm going to do is transfer my design onto the outside, and then I'll be ready to cut it. So what I did is I went ahead and took a piece of paper and I drew out the same size of the box, 4.5 inches by 6 inches on paper, and that's this section here. And then I went ahead and I created my design. Now I'm going to use the same design on all 4 sides of my box. You may want to do something different on 2 sides, maybe opposite sides the same design, and then the other 2 opposite sides something different. Or you may want to use all 4, the same design for all 4 sides, I should say. So what I'm going to do with this now is I'm going to carefully lay down my box. I'm going to take this paper, I'm going to line up the edges with the box, and then I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to go ahead and trace my design. And as I trace my design, I'm going to press just hard enough that it'll impress or transfer that line into the clay, so that when I peel this away, I'm going to have my design on my box easily seen. Now the longer you hold the paper onto the clay, the more it's going to pick up moisture, so as you're tracing it over and over, it may start to tear. Just know that ahead of time. So the quicker you can do it, the better. And you want your tip sharp enough that it'll push and make a line through it onto the clay, but you don't want it so sharp that it's going to tear through the paper. If you have the luxury, you could always make 4 different copies of this, and you could use a fresh copy for each side. But again, I'm just going to line it up, I'm going to trace everything, and then I'm going to go ahead and peel it away and I'll be able to see my design. And then I can go back and redraw into it if I need to see it clearer, but I'm going to do that on all 4 sides first before I start cutting. After I get it transferred on all 4 sides, then I will be using an X-Acto knife to go ahead and cut my design out. And when I cut, I'm going to insert the blade and drag it. Try not to saw with it. If you saw with it, you get rough, jagged cuts. If you put it in nicely and drag it, you'll get these nice, clean edges, nice, clean cuts. And I'm just going to go side by side, little by little, going ahead and cutting my design. Now, when I make my design, I'll try and hold this up a little closer. I'm trying to do kind of a snowflake design. So when you make your design, try not to go any closer than a 1/2 inch from any edge, because if you go too close, you may run into that coil that we put into the seam and it'll block it. Or if it's near a top edge, if it's too close, when it dries and shrinks, it may cause cracking. So be aware of that. And then also try to leave yourself about a 1/4 inch gap or more between your cuts. If you get too close, it's going to weaken the clay and you're going to risk it possibly breaking and cracking and breaking and basically falling in. So just keep that in mind, and also don't make your designs too large in terms of big giant open cutouts, because then instead of your design showing when a candle's inside and kind of glowing through, you'll look right through. It'll be more like a window. So you don't see the design, you just look straight through into the candle. So we want to go ahead and try and make them not quite so big in terms of that. Similar to what I have here, I wouldn't go any bigger in terms of the shapes here. So that's what I'll be doing with mine, and then I'll be coming back and showing you the actual cutting of it and the finishing off of it. So that is our Luminari box design. Remember, we want our pieces to be leather hard. Don't try to put them together if they're still real wet and soft. Don't try to cut your designs if it's still real wet and soft. It doesn't cut as cleanly, it doesn't hold its shape, it doesn't have the strength that it needs. So remember, want to wait till it gets leather hard before we do those things. All right, I will see you back here for hopefully what will be the final part to this video, where we have it all cut out, cleaned up, sponged, and finished off. All right, see you guys in the next video.